Hello and welcome back to On the DL. My name is Danny, and this is episode number, what is this, 6, 7? I can't keep track. I re-recorded an episode. I've kind of moved some things around. I recorded a bunch right away and then kind of thought about it, and one of the episodes that I had recorded was about this, it's a story that a video game company, they stole some art from like a digital artist, and that was going to be an earlier episode. But to be honest, I listened to it and I'm like, this isn't very interesting, so I think I deleted it. I'm not going to post it. It's fine. Because the ultimate goal for this is, each episode I want to set a standard of good content that you're listening to this. So with that in mind, I think I've made some big changes, and I'm kind of none of that was English. I had like 3 different words that I was trying to say. I think I have nailed down the theme of the show, at least for the next couple of episodes. I've always had this deep fascination and also appreciation for like military operations and secrets and spy related content and stuff that like the CIA and the FBI, and seeing that this is the On the DL podcast, I think that it makes sense that we would explore some of these topics. So for the next couple episodes, that's what we're going to do. Is I'm going to look at some interesting stories from around the world, they're U.S. based stories, but they take place, they could take place in other countries, but as long as that we're the ones that we're doing it, CIA, FBI, or a U.S. spy, that's the theme. I've done a lot of research on how to do a podcast, and some of the advice I've seen is that you need to have like a centralized theme, or like a niche, as they say, and that way you can build up an audience and go from there. But none of that really matters because we're so early on in this show, so we're just testing it out. We're just trying different things, and I hope you've enjoyed the episode so far. And as always, let me know in the comments. You can leave a comment on Spotify, or you can follow me on Instagram, OTDL Podcast, On the DL Podcast. And also, I've been working on better video content, so that's coming up. It's probably going to take another month or so for me to like dial everything in. But the idea is that you can, if you want to, if you're more of a visual person, then you could watch the shows on YouTube. And during the video episodes, I'm going to, so I have worked as a graphic designer and motion graphics and video editor and stuff for a couple years. So my goal with the YouTube videos is you'll be able to see my pretty face, and then also I'm going to put some graphics that I make that are about these topics, to show a visual representation of what I'm talking about. So right now you can watch these episodes on YouTube. However, it's like technically it is a video, but not really. It's just like on screen, and you can see some of the audio. So if you're interested in that, you can check that out on YouTube. So with all of that out of the way, that was a very long 3-minute intro. Today we're going to talk about a project that occurred so it started in 1968 during the Cold War. It really picked up in 1974, 75. And if you're unfamiliar with the Cold War or some of the specific details about the Cold War, don't worry, I don't know all of it. The Cold War is one of those things in school that we learned about it a little bit, but I felt like World War II, the Korean War also got skipped. Like, I learned a lot about World War II and Vietnam. Those are the 2 that I remember the most. And it's crazy to think about our, some of you listening, like your parents, or like for me, my grandparent, one of my grandpa on my dad's side was in World War II. He was also in the Korean War. And it's discussed very little today. World War II more, but the Korean War, I hear a lot. That's why they call it the Forgotten War. And many people lost their lives during that. So it's just kind of crazy to think about these massive things can happen, and then over the course of 50 years, they just, there's just so much happening in the world, especially now today, that things just get forgotten, especially these historical, pieces of American, well, history, duh. And I think that I'd like to explore it and learn more and to share these stories because I think that they are important. So today we are going to talk about Project Azorian. And if you've never heard of that, don't worry. I did not know anything about it before I started researching this. So I'm also going to give some context as to when and where this occurred. And I'm going to throw out a lot of dates, and eventually in the future, when we get the videos up and running, this will be a perfect, example for, I'm going to show dates and graphics and things like that. So that's coming while I work on that. But for now, we're still sticking with the video only content. And as always, I'm going to say a lot of names and dates, and I'm going to try to explain and remind you as much as I can. There's nothing worse than when you're listening to like a podcast or a show, like Game of Thrones, for example, is like notorious for, they just throw out the first 2 or 3 episodes. There's like 7 different names, and it's just quick because they're trying to set it up to like why these people are important, but I can't fucking remember. I can't remember names like that. Like, I don't know. I need flashcards. So I know it's hard, especially with some of these names like Soviet submarine K-129, the Hughes Glomar Explorer, USS Halibut. There's going to be a bunch of different technical names, so I'm going to try my best to say them and not say like, oh, well, this ship and then that boat and then this thing sank and then so. Anyway, all right, here we go. This is the story of Project Azorian, the $1 billion secret. A sunken Soviet sub, a fake mining company, and a ship called the Hughes Glomar Explorer. I messed up the tagline. Whatever. We continue. All right. So everything that we talk about today is on the DL. Okay, so don't tell anybody. And today we're going to dive deep, literally, into the story of a sunken ship and the men that were on that ship, or I guess submarine for that example, and the whole project that cost roughly $800 million, which would be like over $1 billion today. So what do you get when you mix the Cold War, a sunken Soviet submarine, Howard Hughes, and a $1 billion ship with a giant claw? One of the most audacious covert operations in U.S. history, Project Azorian. This is the story of how the CIA tried to steal a Soviet sub from the bottom of the Pacific and how they nearly pulled it off. So, to give you some context, this occurred, as I mentioned, in 1968, but I am going to give out some dates and some context as to where this occurred in or during the Cold War. So, 1945, World War II ends, atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. 1949, the USSR tests its first nuclear weapon, ending the monopoly on atomic weapons. Shout out if you listened to the Rosenberg case. We covered how the USSR miraculously made some discoveries about atomic weapon testing pretty quickly. 1950, from 1953, the Korean War. 1957, the space race begins. 1961, the Berlin Wall is built. And in 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis begins. 1964, U.S. troops enter Vietnam. 1968 is the Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia. Now here is one of our key dates here. In 1968, the sinking of the K-129, which we will get into in a moment. 1974, Project Azorian. 1979, the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. And in 1989, the Berlin Wall falls. And then in 1991, the Soviet Union collapses. Okay, so this is where our story really matters. 1968 and 1974. So, in 1968, a Soviet Gulf II class submarine, K-129, sank about 1,600 miles northwest of Hawaii. All 98 crew members perished. Now, as I was planning and researching this episode, I think sometimes in these stories, there's, and a lot of the articles and things that I read, that fact is glossed over. It's like, okay, yeah, this whole submarine, they all died, but they were Soviet, so whatever. I don't really agree with that. And I want to acknowledge those 98 men men and women that perished. Dying in a submarine has to be probably one of the worst ways to go. Dying in a submarine or dying in fire, because it's either instantaneous, like you get crushed, like the implosion, or there was another example of a Russian submarine that sank. And I watched a really cool video about this on YouTube from Scary Interesting. That's the channel, Scary Interesting. And this video was about the Kursk disaster, where another Russian submarine, it suffered a major malfunction with some of the weaponry on board. There was explosions, and a couple people survived these explosions, and the sub sank to the bottom, whatever. And a couple guys were alive for 3 days in complete darkness. One of the guys he basically wrote what happened, and then once the Russian government, when they were able to get down there to the wreckage and find them, they were able to read this handwritten letter of this guy basically saying, we know that there's no way we're going to get out of this, because you're trapped at the bottom of the ocean, you can't see anything. They died of carbon monoxide poisoning because now there's no airflow. So yeah, it's a terrible thing, and I hate it when in reading these stories, it's like, well, they were the enemy, so therefore it's okay that they perished. And I don't agree with that. These were husbands and fathers and sons and brothers, and they were people. At the end of the day, they are people too, and it's just tragic that they died. Operating machinery that they thought was safe, and yeah, it's just tragic. So I wanted to make sure that we mentioned and acknowledged the lives that were lost. What was the K-129? So it was a ballistic missile submarine, and it was built in March 8th. Let's see. Oh wait, no. It was completed in 1959, and it sank on March 8th, 1968. Approximately 1,560 nautical miles northwest of Oahu, in the Pacific Ocean. Is that correct? Yes, Hawaii. Yes, okay. Just making sure. So this submarine, and I feel like this happens all the time. When there's a boat that's built and it's like the number one, like this boat, like the Titanic, right? It's unsinkable. It's the biggest thing. If you're getting on a boat and someone says it's unsinkable, get off, because I feel like that has been said so many times, and they're all sinkable. They all, to a degree, they are sinkable. Okay, so let's get a little bit more information on the K-29 here. So this was a Russian submarine that had nuclear-powered torpedoes and missiles, and it was a huge deal, and it was a massive pride of the Soviet Navy. And during the Cold War, this was specifically extremely important. The K-29 was a ballistic missile submarine that served in the Pacific Fleet of the Soviet Navy. It was one of 6 Project 629 strategic ballistic missile submarines assigned to the 15th Submarine Squadron, base out of, I can't pronounce that, it's a Russian, Rybakli naval base near, oh boy, this one's even worse, Petropavlovsky Kamchatsky. Wow. Yeah. All right. So it was in a Russian base. So Russian is such a hard language to learn. Like, there's so many languages that are like out there. I don't even see the where the words begin or where they end. There's just like every word has like 14 letters in Russian. I can't. I'm just not even going to read that. Okay. So this The K-129 was performing some tests and research, and it had been on patrol. So, the K-129, having completed two 70-day ballistic missile combat patrols in 1967, was tasked with her third patrol in February of 1968, with an expected completion date of the 5th of May, 1968. Upon departure on the 24th of February, K-129 reached deep water, conducted a test dive, returned to the surface, and reported by radio that all was well, and proceeded on to patrol. Upon her final deployment, K-129's commander was Captain First Rank Vladimir I. Kolbazar, and Captain Second Rank Alexander M. Zufavarin was senior assistant to the commander, executive officer. She carried hull number 722 on her final deployment. No further communication was received from K-129 despite normal radio check-ins expected when the submarine crossed the 180th meridian, and further when she arrived at her patrol area. By mid-March, Soviet Navy commanders at the naval base that I cannot pronounce became concerned because K-129 had missed two consecutive radio check-ins. First, K-129 was instructed by normal fleet broadcast to break radio silence and contact headquarters. Later and more urgent communications all went unanswered. Soviet naval headquarters declared K-129 missing by the third week of March and organized an air, surface, and underwater search and rescue effort in the North Pacific from Kamchatka and Vladivostok. Whoa. Okay. So, basically the submarine was doing patrols, everything was fine, and then all of a sudden, total radio silence. No idea where this thing might be. And that region, if you're unfamiliar with the Pacific Ocean, it's large. It's like, especially above Hawaii, I mean, there's really not much. There's nothing. It's like, if you've heard of that, there's a point called Point Nemo where the closest humans, if you're at Point Nemo, the closest human beings would be at the International Space Station. That's fucking nuts. So, I mean, talk about castaway. Like, you are gone. If you are out there, there's nobody, there's nothing for miles. So, and this, again, keep in mind, this is like 1968, so the technology and satellite imagery was nowhere near as robust as it is now. GPS location, especially way out there in like remote areas, like good luck trying to find where that's going to be. So the Soviets, they start looking for the ship, and they don't have all that great of an idea of where it is. While the Soviets are doing this, our guys at the CIA and our Navy, they are noticing increased activity in the Pacific. And that brings some questions as to, okay, well, one, their Navy is way far from where they should be, and like in their normal kind of area. Also, like, we can see the different types of vehicles, the search and rescue vehicles. We can see that there's a lot of activity in, various areas close to Hawaii, which would be concerning. Could this have been a setup for a potential attack, or, were the Soviets planning to do some sort of reconnaissance on military bases in Hawaii, or, even further into like San Francisco and San Diego? At the time, we were unsure, but our Navy, the CIA, kept track and kept monitoring. So, the Soviets' deployment in the Pacific was analyzed by U.S. intelligence as a likely reaction to a submarine loss. Now, there's going to be a couple different acronyms and things, so I'm going to try to explain them the best that I can. So, the first one here that we're going to talk about is the SOSUS. So, that stands for Sound Surveillance System. Is the original name for a submarine detection system based on passive sonar developed by the United States Navy to track Soviet submarines. Which, fun fact, did you know that when a submarine, when they do that like radar, like the pinging thing, if you were in the water, like anywhere near when one of those sonar like waves go out, it would completely obliterate. Like you would die. Like it would obliterate your eardrums. It would be the loudest noise. It's that kind of technology and sonar and all that stuff. I think is really fascinating. Also sad for the fish and the sharks and the whales and stuff. I'm sure that they fucking hate that. So maybe we should relax on the sonar system. But it is pretty cool. It's pretty cool. I'm not going to go into all the science and engineering of how to, how sonar was invented, maybe in a later episode. But just to keep us on track. So our guys start doing this sonar, and they're trying to look and get a detection as to why the Soviets are in this area, and what are they looking for? I mean, especially they would be looking for anything like the 129 would definitely be cause for concern if they cannot find it. So the U.S. Navy analyzed acoustic data recorded by the SOS-US hydrophone network in the Northern Pacific. So there are 4 AFTAC or ATAC sites in Alaska. There was also a couple down in Point Sur, Monterey, California. So they're using different tracking data from all over the West Coast and like Alaska. So you got Alaska, Point Sur. I believe that there was some down there in San Diego. So you can basically a network of sonar, like, what do you call it? Like radial detecting or whatever you want to call it. And that they're able to identify unique signatures that occurred on March 8th. Now, keep in mind, like there's activity all the time, especially during the Cold War. There's going to be a lot of different testing and, missile launches and tests like that. So at first, this data could have been one of our own. It's not really sure. And again, this is in the middle of nowhere. So after analyzing some of the data, it was believed, this is now in July, the United States Navy has begun Operation Sand Dollar with the deployment of the USS Halibut from Pearl Harbor. So after researching the data, taking a look at everything going on, using the Point Sur's data, the date and time of the event, the U.S. Coast Guard were able to isolate the origin or the possible origin of wherever this massive, sonar ping. Basically, there was an explosion, and they're able to identify. Isn't that really cool? You're able to identify the location of where a sound happened. I wish I knew more of how that works. It's pretty crazy. So with the 5 SOS-US lines of bearing, naval intelligence was able to localize the site of K-129 wreck to the vicinity of the 40.1 latitude and the 179.9 degrees east longitude, which is close to the international date line. Now, keep in mind, the Soviets, they did not have this technology. So their search was based off of their last reports of where the submarine may have been. But we have this array, this network array of hydrophones and data, and we're able to identify or triangulate roughly the position. So, in July, we begin Operation Sand Dollar with the deployment of the USS Halibut. And the USS Halibut was pretty cool. So this was a nuclear-powered guided missile submarine turned into a special operations platform, and would be later redesigned as an attack submarine, and was the second ship of the United States Navy to be named after a fish, a halibut. So that's pretty cool. Now, okay, USS or the Special Operations, the Sand Dollar. Yeah, here we are, Operation Sand Dollar. Okay, so in 1965, John P. Craven was recruited to Operation Sand Dollar by the U.S. Naval Intelligence to build a submarine that would, quote, hover in place and dangle cameras miles down, deep enough to scout the ocean bottom for Soviet treasures. Craven was provided with a selection of either the USS Seawolf or USS Halibut to convert, as the budget could not commission a new purpose-built vessel. So he's just going to take one that's already out there and outfit it. Preferring the Halibut, he was awarded $70 million in February 1965 to outfitter with electric, sonic, photographic, and video gadgets. Halibut entered Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard for a major overhaul, and on the 15th of August was redesigned as an attack submarine with the hull classification symbol SSN 587. So they took this old submarine, and this Operation Sand Dollar, this had happened a couple years prior. So in 1965, they had already started working on the submarine, and then in 1968, now they have a reason to use it. It has all these, state-of-the-art cameras, and it's just crazy to think about. 1968, man, that's a long time. And they're building all this technology. It also makes you wonder too. What else have they heard with this array network out there in the ocean? What kind of aliens or what kind of crazy shit have they that they're just not going to tell us about? Especially if you're building, as this guy said, dangle cameras miles down, deep enough to scout the ocean bottom for Soviet treasures. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So that's the USS Halibut. There's another. That's our submarine that has now been outfitted with all this special technology, and it's going to go and it's going to look for the in the area of the shipwreck, essentially. So the USS Halibut spent several weeks taking, first it had to find. First, it was to find it and to photograph it. So in 68, which had been configured, this is at 1968, the U.S. Halibut, which had been configured to use deep submergence search equipment, was the Navy's only specialty equipped submarine. The Halibut located the wreck after 3 weeks of visual search using robotic, remote-controlled cameras. It took almost 5 months of search to find the wreck of the U.S. nuclear-powered submarine Scorpion in the Atlantic, also in 1968. So keep in mind, the 60s, submarines are just falling left and right. So this is par for the course, I guess. The Halibut is reported to have spent the next several weeks taking more than 20,000 close-up photos of every aspect of the K-129 wreck, a feat for which Halibut received a special classified Presidential Unit Citation signed by Lyndon B. Johnson in 1968. So the photos are now the photos of the wreck are being sent back here to the United States, and the CIA, they're analyzing all these photographs, and a CIA analyst wrote a report indicating that there was a good probability that the nuclear missile in the number 3 missile tube was still intact. Jackpot. So now this is where Project Azorian really kicks off, because we found the sub, and there's a really good chance that there could be nuclear missiles on there, and documentation like launch codes and cryptographic materials and all of this really good data that the U.S. could use. Now keep in mind, the Soviets, up until this point, they don't know what happened to the submarine. They have determined that it's lost and probably sunk, but they don't know where the wreckage is. They are unaware of our doing up until this point. They're unaware that we have found it, that we're taking photographs of it, and that we plan to go and try to pick it up. In 1970, based on the photography, Defense Secretary Melvin Laird and Henry Kissinger, and then National Security Advisor, Henry Kissinger was the National Security Advisor, proposed a clandestine plan to recover the wreckage so that the U.S. could possibly study Soviet nuclear missile technology, as well as possibly recover cryptographic materials, as I mentioned. The proposal was accepted by President Richard Nixon, and the CIA was tasked to attempt the recovery. So, could you imagine if you were in the Navy and your, sergeant, boss guy, whatever, is like, all right, we're going to go try to grab the submarine. And hey, by the way, there's a really good chance that there's nuclear missiles that have been underwater and just like in a wreckage for up and now 2 years, right? This is now 1970 that the plan has been put into place. And they're going to fucking go down there and grab it? Are you insane? Mm. That's when I would check out. It's like, hey, I'll be on the search team and I'll take pictures of the thing, but I am not going down there and picking up a semi-destroyed vessel that may or may not have unexploded ordnance, nuclear ordnance on there. So, with the plan in place, now comes the next step of this plan. So, the CIA needed to create a specialized machine and ship in order to recover. So they're not just going to send divers down. It's too far. They're not going to send divers. They're not going to send, at this time, that we didn't have the technology, like, at least not publicly, like that little submarine that tried to go down to the Titanic and imploded. We didn't have that. So they're going to build a boat, a giant boat, that's going to have a big-ass mechanical claw. And this is going to turn into basically a claw machine, like that you would see at Boomers or whatever, kind of Dave and Buster's. And we're going to try to pick up the busted-ass submarine on the ocean floor in the claw and then study it. Which, again, if I was on this boat, I would say, are you fucking kidding me? Like, we're going to pick this shit up. We're going to pick this shit up and bring it on the boat, and then what? And then what are we going to do? What, take the missiles out? I mean, this is nuts. This is where our friends at the CIA, I don't think that they know that this show exists. And by the way, I just want to mention, just disclaimer, everything I'm talking about is public information. So I am not doing any shady shit. Okay? This is all on Wikipedia. In fact, you can read about Project Azorian on the CIA's website. So this is all out there. Okay? I am not trying to tell anybody's secrets or any dirty laundry. This is already public information. This is where Howard Hughes comes into play. And if you are unfamiliar with Howard Hughes, no problem, I got you. So, Howard Hughes was an American aerospace engineer, business magnate, film producer, and investor. He was one of the richest and most influential people in the world during his lifetime. He became a prominent film producer and then an important figure in the aviation industry. Later in life, he would be known for his eccentric behavior and reclusive lifestyle, oddities that were caused in part by his worsening OCD, chronic pain from a near-fatal plane crash, and increasing deafness. As a film tycoon, Hughes gained fame in Hollywood beginning in the late 1920s when he produced big-budget, often controversial films such as The Racket, Hell's Angels, and Scarface. Scarface? Whoa, 1932, Scarface. Okay. He later acquired RKO Pictures, film studio in 1948, recognized then as one of the big five studios in Hollywood's golden age. Although the production company struggled under his control and ultimately ceased operations in 1957. In 1932, Hughes founded Hughes Aircraft Company and spent the next 2 decades setting multiple world airspeed records and building landmark planes like the Hughes H-1 Racer, 1935, and the the H-4 Hercules, the Spruce Goose, 1947. Okay. So Howard Hughes was, as I mentioned, a businessman. He made a bunch of money making movies, and then got in the aerospace industry, and he worked as CEO and owner of Hughes Aircraft Company, Hughes Medical Institute. This is his occupations as listed: aerospace engineer, business magnate, okay, film producer, investor, philanthropist, pilot. He was the chairman and CEO of Summa Corporation, founder of the Howard Hughes Corporation, founder of the Hughes Aircraft Company, founder and benefactor of the Howard Hughes Medical Institute, owner of Hughes Air West Airlines. So he's a big deal. super rich guy. I believe that there was a movie, a good movie, Leonardo DiCaprio. Let's do a little searchy. Leonardo DiCaprio. Also in Las Vegas, there used to be the Howard Hughes was airport. So there's now the like the what do you call it? Oh, why can't I think of the name? The Las Vegas airport. Harry Reid. Jesus. I totally forgot the name of the airport as I'm trying to type on here. Leonardo DiCaprio, Howard Hughes, The Aviator. Yes, this is a good movie. Came out in 2004. The Aviator. That's right. Gwen Stefani's in it. Alec Baldwin, John C. Reilly, Kate Beckinsale, Kate Blanchett, and Leonardo DiCaprio. Yeah, check that out. So Howard Hughes. So he is going to be a major figure in the cover-up story. A company was created, Global Marine Development Inc., the research and development arm of Global Marine Inc. So you have Global Marine Development, and then the parent company is Global Marine Inc., a pioneer in deepwater offshore drilling operations, was contracted to design, build, and operate the Hughes Glomar Explorer to secretly salvage the sunken Soviet submarine. So this ship was built in Philadelphia, and billionaire businessman Howard Hughes, whose company were already contracted on numerous classified U.S. military weapons, aircraft, and satellite contracts, agreed to lend his name to the project to support the cover-up story that the ship was mining manganese nodules from the ocean floor. But Hughes and his companies had no actual involvement in the project. So the CIA said, hey, Mr. Hughes, we want to put your name on this company, and we're just going to build a giant ship in your name. We're going to tell everybody that this is your deal. Meanwhile, it's not. He had nothing to do with it. He, to my knowledge, didn't give any money. They're just using him as a front. So this ship, the I can't say this. The Hughes Glomar Explorer. It is a 63,000 short ton, 57,000 ton, 619 foot long, big ass boat. It's totally insane. So this ship, they're going to build this big ass ship. Like I said, it's going to have a giant crane like in the middle of it. It's going to go down, pick up the wreckage, bring it back up into like a little project bay kind of area within the ship, so that it can be studied and they can recover any materials in privacy. That's kind of the whole idea. Also, the crane and this whole apparatus, they're within the ship or like below the ship, so that the Soviets or anybody else, they couldn't see exactly what was happening. All this was going to be done in secrecy. So it's just so cool to think about. This giant ass boat is going to go out there and try to salvage it. The Glomar, the Hughes Glomar Explorer, like I said, officially was built to go mine some rocks, but that's not going to happen. So the Soviet diesel electric submarine, so it sank. As we mentioned, that's the K-129. The halibut identified where it was, and now, once they've got the funding, got the photographs, the ship's being built, it's going to go out there. And shout out to Long Beach, because the Hughes Glomar Explorer would eventually leave Long Beach Harbor, and it would go all the way out, sailing roughly 3,000 nautical miles to where the wreckage was. Now, also our friends at Lockheed, they do like defense and missiles, and they're a big government Department of Defense company. They officially titled, I've been calling it a big ass crane, but that's obviously not the official title. The official title is capture vehicle, but it was also affectionately named Clementine. So that's the crane, is Clementine. That's nice. Uh, so the Hughes Glomar Explorer arrived at the recovery site on July 4th, hey, Independence Day, 1974, after departing Long Beach, California. And so it conducted this salvage operation for about a month. During this time, now that the Glomar Explorer is out in the ocean, now the Soviets are aware of what's going on. And at least 2 Soviet Navy ships visited the Hughes Glomar Explorer's worksite, the ocean-going tugboat SB-10, and the Soviet missile range instrumentation ship Chazma. 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 It was found out way later. In 1991, that the Soviets were tipped off about the operation and were aware that the CIA was planning some kind of salvage operation. But the military at that time, Soviet military, believed it was impossible that they could perform such a task and disregarded further intelligence warnings. Later, Soviet ambassador Anatoly Dobrynin stated sending urgent messages back to Soviet Navy, warning them that the operation was imminent. Soviet military engineer experts reevaluated their positions and claimed that it was indeed possible, though highly unlikely, to recover K-129, and ships in the area were ordered to report any unusual activity, although the lack of knowledge as to where K-129 was located impeded their ability to stop any salvage operations. So, just as a reminder, so we are in 1974, and they are performing, the Hughes Glomar Explorer is out there. It's going to do the recovery. The Soviets are like, what is this? What are you guys doing out here now? But up until this point, the Soviets had no idea where K-129 was. And also, if they did know where it was and did have an idea that we were trying to pick it up, they thought, there's no fucking way they're going to pick up this ship that's on the bottom of the ocean and then bring it back up. It's not possible. Well, you must not be aware of the Hughes Glomar Explorer and the CI fucking A. We're going to do some crazy shit. We're going to pick this shit up off the bottom of the floor of the ocean. So, during the operation now, during the recovery effort, and by the way, the submarine, the K-129, weighed roughly 1,750 tons and was approximately 16,000 feet below from the surface, from like the crane. So, I mean, that's totally insane. That's totally insane. So, during the and it's like I'm always curious, like, it just sounds so like, okay, yeah, sure, they're just gonna, they're gonna pick this thing up. Like the idea of, like engineering, for example, like it's fun, and you can come up with these ideas like, yeah, sure, we're gonna use a claw and we're gonna pick it up off the floor, but then to actually do the math and to like build it is so incredible to me. And I just have no idea. I have no idea how these things happen. And I can talk about it, but I wish I knew more as to the science behind it, because it's really, really cool. So the ship is beginning its operation, and it was able to recover a proportion of K-129. It was being lifted to the surface. However, a mechanical failure in the grapple caused, this is in the recovery vehicle, the Clementine, the giant claw, the giant fucking claw. A failure in the grapple caused 2/3 of the recovered section to break off. Fuck me. So, okay, so, hey, so you know that submarine that we're picking up that has nuclear torpedoes and missiles and stuff? Yes, okay, so half of it, or 2/3 of it, is currently falling back to the ocean as we're bringing up the rest of it. Jesus Christ. So 2/3 of the recovered section broke off. This lost section is said to have held many of the most sought items, including the code book and nuclear missiles. Great. The recovered section held 2 nuclear-tipped torpedoes and some cryptographic machines, along with the bodies of 6 Soviet submariners who were given a formal, filmed burial at sea. And we're going to get into that later, but there's a video of them burying these Navy sea guys. So the operation was like, it was, a success, kind of. So 2 nuclear torpedoes and then several bodies in a code book, which is, it's great, but they wanted more. And also keep in mind, too, that the full report as to what they found may not ever be brought to light. So the CIA and, our military could just be saying, yeah, well, we recovered 2 torpedoes, when in actuality they recovered a lot more than what they're going to say. So as far as I know, and as far as you know, that's what they recovered. Sorry, keep saying the wrong word. And like I said, we'll get into the burial at sea, which they filmed. Why did they film? I don't know. Now, the as I mentioned, the recovery effort was deemed a success, and it was not a full failure, but it was all right. I say that now, yeah, it was all right, but it's just like total engineering feat of improbability. As for the 6 members, they were buried at sea in metal caskets because of radioactivity concerns. God, those bodies must have been so disgusting. I mean, like, I want to be respectful, of course, but so the submarines sank in 1968, and their bodies were not recovered until 1974. However, they were at the bottom of the ocean in water, and it's probably dark as shit out there, so decomposition, I don't know, man. I mean, I can only imagine. It must have been nasty. It must have been really, really nasty. They were buried in metal caskets in case that there was any sort of like radioactive, fallout or anything like that. Now, the burial at sea was filmed, and you can watch this. You can watch it, like, it's on Wikipedia. I mean, it's not like the body. It's not an open casket, obviously, but they did this, or we did this, as a respectful, kind of a dignitary kind of a deal. So we're doing this so that because up until this point, remember, the Soviets had no idea that we were literally recovering their submarine. I mean, imagine that. Like, we found their stuff, we're stealing their stuff. We also recovered some of your dead service members. It looks real bad. So the least that we could do was at least be respectful and bury them at sea. So a ton of imagery that came out of this, lots of different, highly, highly classified materials came out of this project, and the entire salvage operation was recorded by the CIA documentary film crew. However, this film remains classified. A short proportion of the film showing the recovery and subsequent burial at sea, recovered in the forward section of the K-129, was given to the Russian government in 1992. So years and years later, they show them, hey, look, we were respectful and we buried your people at sea. Sorry about your submarine that sank to the bottom of the ocean. Now, this remained a secret from the public for, about a year or so, maybe a little bit longer. But in 1975, there was a second mission to recover the lost proportion that was planned. So they're going to go back. The Glomar Explorer was going to go back and pick it up, right? However, a bizarre and totally unforeseen occurrence had already started a chain of events that would ultimately expose the Glomar Explorer's true purpose and make another mission impossible. In June of 1974, just before the Glomar was going to set sail, thieves had broken into one of the Hughes offices in Los Angeles and stole secret documents, one tying Howard Hughes to the CIA and the Glomar Explorer. Despite the desperate recover of this document, let me read that again. Desperate to recover this document, CIA called the FBI, which in turn enlisted the Los Angeles Police Department. The search drew attention, and by the autumn of 1974, the media began to pick up rumors of a sensational story. So, right before the ship's about to go out, there's this these thieves steal this information. So the Glomar, it still goes out, it still does its recovery and all that stuff. However, Director of Central Intelligence William E. Colby personally appealed to those who had learned about Azorian to not disclose the project, because if we disclose it, then the Soviets are going to learn about it. For a while, they cooperated, but on the 7th of February 1975, Los Angeles Times published an account that made connections between the robbery, Hughes, the CIA, and the recovered proportion. After that, investigative reporter Jack Anderson broke the story on national television, asserting that the Navy experts had told him that the sunken submarine contained no real secrets and that the project was a waste of taxpayers' money. Journalists flooded into Long Beach area where Glomar was preparing for its second mission. The Ford administration neither confirmed nor denied any stories of circulation, but by late June, the Soviets had assigned a ship to monitor and guard the recovery site. With Glomar's cover blown, the White House canceled any further recovery operations. And that's where, if you ever hear that that famous, there's that statement, we can neither confirm nor deny. That's the Glomar response, is what they call it. We cannot confirm or deny that we were doing anything out there. So the Glomar, its career was over, for now. However, they did some experimental mining and, some different, kind of testing. Now it was actually doing what it was assigned to do or thought to be doing when they first built it. And this I thought was pretty funny. So the fate of the Glomar. So it basically, there's now no need for it, this giant fucking crane thing. So it was put up for sale and auction. Okay, this is now 1967. The GSA, which is the General Service Administration, published advertisements inviting businesses to submit proposals for leasing the ship. It had received a total of 4 bids. This is my favorite. $2 by Braden Ryan, a Lincoln, Nebraska college student. Here you go. Here's your $2. But nothing really took place. Lockheed Martin, the space company, they submitted a $3, a 3. So the college student goes, here's $2, and then Lockheed goes, here's $3. No, sorry. They, $3 million. So $3 million. The college student, $2. $3 million company. However, Lockheed, they weren't able to secure funding, so the Glomar Explorer ended up just going back into the Navy, and it would eventually be dismantled and salvaged and all that stuff over the course of the next 30, 40 years. So that was kind of the end of the Glomar Explorer. But as for Project Azorian, now 1975, now it comes out. The story of this whole secret operation we recovered, but it's too late because we had already recovered all the documentation that we needed. We had already recovered the Soviet, missile. And there's actually a pretty cool picture. You can see what the wreckage of the K-129 looks like. It's like a model and stuff. It's at the bottom of the ocean. I believe it's still down there. Unless the Soviets did their own secret recovery option or recovery operation. But as for now, yeah, it's still down there. The whole project Azorian cost around $800 million, which would be roughly $4 billion today. And this project is still considered one of the most technically advanced covert operations ever attempted. There are still many, many theories about what the CIA may have recovered. If that was, they definitely recovered more things than they said that they did. It remains a textbook example of high-stakes secrecy. What they got may still be classified. However, it completely changed the game on, Soviet technology, nuclear missiles, nuclear submarines. And yeah. So that is Project Azorian, the $1 billion secret. And I hope that you enjoy these types of episodes. I think that this stuff, as I mentioned, is really intriguing and really interesting. And I find this stuff to be fascinating, especially when it comes to secrets and things of that nature. And although, this project failed to meet its full intelligence objectives, it's one of the greatest intelligence operations during the Cold War. And it remains an engineering marvel and the state of deep ocean imaging and heavy lift technology. That's going to do it for this episode. As always, you can follow me on OTDL on Instagram. You can leave some comments. I should say OTDL podcast on Instagram. Be sure to leave some comments as to what you want to talk about next time. And I will see you guys in the next episode. Thanks for listening.